More than 4,000 people in the United States have now died from coronavirus, 4,000. And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo just announced nearly 400 people died in the state in one day. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. Cuomo said that he does not expect the number of cases to peak until the end of April and warned Americans this is not just a New York problem.
Look at us today, see yourself tomorrow. And let's address it in New York, and let's cooperate to address it in New York, because it's going to be in your town tomorrow.
This comes after last night, President Trump and the coronavirus task force released grim new projections, saying the virus could kill as many as 240,000 Americans. And that's if people follow social restrictions. The president warning the next 2 weeks will be brutal. We begin with Dr. Tom Frieden, former director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and president of Resolve to Save Lives. And Dr. Frieden, maybe give us a taste of what it's like to, if you put yourself in the shoes of Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx, to deliver that message to the president and know that then the president is going to have to be the one responsible to deliver the message then to the American people that we've got a long way to go.
We need to act with tremendous urgency. We're all in this together. It's crucially important that we use this time, this precious time that we have, to get ready, because that number is not destiny. That number is a warning. And what we have to do is everything in our power to prevent as many deaths as possible. And that means not only that everyone needs to stay home, but it also means that we need to urgently ramp up our healthcare system, our tracking of the virus, our public health system. That's what other countries have done to get this under control, and we can do it, but we have to work together with an enormous sense of urgency and well coordinated.
Just to go back to Governor Cuomo for just a moment, because he talked about this problem being one of trying to protect our healthcare system. And I think that with all the news and people seeing what the nurses and doctors and the EMTs are going through, it's really sinking in. Take a listen to what Governor Cuomo said on that earlier.
We have been behind from day one. This virus has been ahead of us from day one. You don't win a war that way. The next battle is the apex. The next battle is on the top of the mountain. That's where the enemy either overwhelms our healthcare system, or we are able to handle the onslaught of the enemy.
And Dr. Frieden, just take a look at this chart here. It's of the states that have 1,000 or more cases. And to the governor's point, this is not just a New York problem, though it is a very severe problem in New York right now. But across the board, you see states, Indiana even with 2,100 cases, even Alabama now. So these are states with at least 1,000 cases. What should states be preparing for right now? Hello, Dr. Frieden, can you hear me? Dr. Frieden? I'm afraid he cannot hear me. So unfortunately, I will answer my own question. And that was that the governor of New York was telling states, you have to understand this is coming your way. So even if you are in a state where you don't have a lot of problems right now, maybe you don't even have a lockdown order, that this is possibly coming. And Dr. Frieden, were they able to fix that connection? Dr. Frieden? Okay. All right. So we'll probably have to move on from that. Let me just give you a couple of other pieces of information here. You did have the Surgeon General Jerome Adams saying on the Today Show that he is begging people to stay at home because, just to go back to this issue of the states, when it's like a tsunami, right? The big wave comes, and it takes a little while for it to get there. That's why you have some time to get out of the way. I think that's what the officials are trying to say today. There are 190,000 cases in the United States. Dr. Frieden, they're telling me you're available now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because I'm obviously not the expert, and you are. Maybe talk a little bit about what these hospitals in other states should be preparing for now, and why it's important that even if you don't have a lot of cases in your state right now, to respect the social distancing so that you can protect your healthcare systems. Because if we lose the healthcare system's capability to take care of us, we're all going to be in a lot of trouble.
There is no city anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world that can withstand the number of cases of COVID-19 that will occur if we don't physically distance urgently. And there's a delay. If you turn off the tap of the spread of infections today, it'll be a week or two before people get sick because they were exposed. It takes 5-6 days on average, up to 2 weeks to get sick, and then another week before they're hospitalized or severely ill. That's why we know that we're going to continue to see a large number of cases even after the physical distancing starts. But what we do know is that it will get better, but we have to use this precious time, every single second that we have, to work to prepare. That means increased safety in our healthcare system so fewer healthcare workers get infected. That means that people with mild illness need a way to be cared for quickly without infecting others. That means scaling up not just the number of ventilators, but who's going to operate them, what's the equipment for them, how can we save people's lives, and how do we get our public health departments ready to do the kind of testing, contact tracing, isolation, quarantine that's crucial. Other countries have gotten this right. There's no reason we can't also. But what it means is using every second well. This is not a time to wait. It's a time to work.
Let me ask you about that idea of the ventilators and people needing to be trained to use them. Are there people that maybe work in the healthcare profession or elsewhere that could learn this pretty quickly? And how could we get that done?
Nurses, emergency medical technicians, doctors, and others can be trained. A lot of the ventilators are very complex to use. It's really a system. It's about a ventilator. It's about the equipment, the suctioning, the tubing, the people to operate it, and do that safely so that we don't lose more healthcare workers. Healthcare workers are our most precious resource. They're the front lines in this war, this World War C, World War against coronavirus, and we have to make sure that they have the protection they need, not just the protective equipment, but also the systems so that patients with illness are not exposing them. There are ways to structure our care that reduce that risk to patients, and every healthcare facility and every nursing home, every long-term care facility needs to make that happen. This is coming, and it's coming to your community. It is time to do what you can now. Just think about this. Just one thought. If New York City had locked down 2 days later, that would have doubled the number of cases. This comes, as the governor said, like a bullet train, not a freight train. And that means we need to work so quickly, and we need to learn from other countries. Singapore, China, Hong Kong.
Okay, so you mentioned, but
this.
Can I ask you about, learning from China? Like, what could we learn? I mean, we can't even trust the information that they have. And Dr. Birx said that last night, that a lot of the models that they were working with that indicated that it might be a little bit more mild of a problem than it's turned out to be is because China didn't give us the right information. So what did you see there that they did well that we should replicate?
We're learning more about this virus all the time. And as one expert said, we need to be humble about it because we are learning more all the time. Let me give you one number, 700,000. That's the number of contacts that China has traced. And I do believe that number. That's a management number they use. And they did that by having, in one city, the city of Wuhan, where this started, they had 1,800 teams of 5 people tracing contacts. 700,000 people tracked for 14 days each, and when they got sick, immediately isolated. That's how they've been able to tamp this down. They're now testing massively, and they've identified 100 to 200 new cases every day from people coming into China from other places. That's the best of what the future can look like for us, where we're aggressively testing, isolating, contact tracing, so that we can get back to a new normal, a normal where we have to be careful, but we don't have explosive spread. It's possible to do that. That's what Singapore, China, Taiwan, South Korea, that's what they show us.
Okay.
But we have to work much faster and much more coordinated.
All right, Dr. Tom Frieden, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And meanwhile, the U.S. military dealing with.
Well, Dana, we just came out of a briefing with the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Gilday, and Acting Navy Secretary Thomas Modly, and we were given an update. That original letter from the captain, the plea for help to get those 5,000 sailors off the ship after their number of COVID cases, Navy Secretary explained. WHO had said that Vietnam was a low risk. There were only 16 known cases of the virus, and they were in the north near Hanoi. The carrier can only test 200 people a day, meaning it would take 25 days for all the sailors to be tested. But the Navy officials that we just spoke to here at the Pentagon said that they are increasing the testing to 500 tests a day. And again, they are looking for more housing for many of those sailors on board the ship to try and relieve some of the pressure on the Roosevelt. Dana?
When I report, thank you, Jennifer Griffin. Thank you. Doctors and nurses and hospital staff are right now risking their lives.
Military people going into battle, going into war. The bravery is incredible.
Pharmacist and laboratory technician that's working together to stem this tide of unrelenting sick people coming to their doors. No one has been turned away. No one who has needed ventilation has not received ventilation. But you can see how stressful it is for each of them.
Dr. Deborah Birx praising medical workers doing their jobs heroically despite the danger. And joining me now is Zenny Cortez. She's an RN who is the president of National Nurses United. And it's good to have you here with us. I wanted to read to you from a nurse that is describing scary conditions. This is in Marion County, afraid to give her name for understandable reasons, saying that if the expectations continue to be increased as far as patient demand and corners continue to be cut for our safety and those of the next patient, I do not know if I can continue to risk my health and those of my family for a company who thinks this is okay. The staff have not been informed what the complete PPE numbers are, only that we get one mask a day. And Ms. Cortez, what do you think is the biggest problem for nurses right now? Is it this concern about not having enough protective gear?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me and for having to continue to shed light on this. So the main problem is lack of personal protective equipment. That's true. And I understand where my colleague, the nurse that you were mentioning, I understand where she's coming from. It's because the hospital industry, our management people, continue to ration. He needs to do more. He needs to order and mandate all these agencies to release it to the hospitals. We
hear you, and we want the nurses to be taken care of, and I think that they're trying their best, and hopefully it will get better soon, because we know the nurses are concerned and that we need you to be well in order to take care of all of us. Thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
And where do you go when you've lost your job, but you still need to feed your family? Ahead, how food bank workers are racing to help the hungry as COVID-19 crawls across the country. Police having to direct traffic and placing restrictions around the Pittsburgh Community Food Bank so that people can get food safely. Similar scenes across the country as food banks see an increase in need. Molly Line is live. She's just outside of Boston. And Molly, this is happening across the country. I want people to get the help that they need. They shouldn't be afraid to ask for it.
Yeah, those pictures really are remarkable, and they speak to the great need that is out there. And we are talking about something that's happening not just in Pennsylvania, but in many states all over the country. Unemployment claims have skyrocketed. The demand is up at food banks all over the place. People who have lost their jobs, that have been laid off, are seeking food security for their family. It's the kind of help they may have never sought before. And this is something we are seeing from coast to coast.
At many of our sites, we're seeing a 50% to 100% increase in the number of people coming. We also have a food connection hotline where people can call if they need food assistance. And usually the calls are around 200 calls a day. And now we're getting over 1,000 calls a day.
It is weeks with the largest day of distribution in the organization's history one Friday last month. Volunteers, the heart of that organization, have also been limited for safety and for social distancing.
We don't believe this is just a 2-month one and done or a 2-week one and done. We're already seeing that these levels are going to require us to be present and to raise money and to continue to have volunteers on the front lines and keep our team healthy.
They don't expect this need to end anytime soon, so if you're at home and you can't leave your home and you want to help and you have the good fortune to be able to help, many of these food banks across the country are really welcoming those monetary donations right now. Feedingamerica.org, it's a great resource, a great website to go to if you're looking for your local food bank. Dana?
Oh, we have to. All right, Molly Lyon, thank you. And if you can't afford to buy food, paying your rent could also be a big problem. A lot of bills are due on the first of the month, but due to coronavirus, many people don't have the cash. Fox Business Network's Deirdre Bolton with a look at some options, if that's for you. Deirdre.
Yeah, Dana, the one thing is you are not alone. I think that is the one message that we are hearing from financial experts and also from various businesses, banks included. But we heard from Chris Hogan, who is actually a financial expert and author of numerous books. Here's what he told us.
The worst thing you could do is avoid your creditors and wait on them to call you or to make a promise to pay that you can't keep. So a lot of times people will make a promise to pay just to get off the phone. Don't do that. You want to be clear, upfront, and honest with your creditor about your situation and exactly what you can and can't do.
Dana, Chris told us basically write a script ahead of time. These are upsetting times. If you feel like you can't pay your bills, it's even more emotional. He said, make a list, write down dates, or write down what you can pay. Have that index card ready for when you call a landlord or when you call any kind of debtor. Here's a map we want to show you. There are at least 35 states from the state level that are barring eviction during this outbreak. 7 states have a partial ban, and then there are 7 states where no action has been taken. But obviously the majority are just saying, listen, even if people don't pay their rent, you cannot kick them out. There are also companies, that are trying to do their best. And these companies you would have to reach out to on a case-by-case basis, explain what's going on for you. But I'm going to read off this list. Bank of America, Capital One, Chase, Discover Bank, PNC, and TD Bank. These are just a few that if you owe them money, if you have loans with them, and you call them, they have openly said, we will work something out with you, but you need to call us. We're not reaching out to you. You need to call us. Other financial institutions have taken a separate tactic, Dana, and they have actually preset delays. For example, in some cases, 90 days for mortgage payments, 120 days, and those vary as well. But this is the idea of the business community trying to support citizens as well during this crisis. Dana, back to you.
What an important report. Thank you, Deirdre Bolton. Everybody take advantage of those companies and make sure you take that advice. Call them first. And cruise ships headed for South Florida with cruise ship, and they join me now. You are from Tallahassee, Florida. Tell me a little bit, Faye, what has it been like there on the ship for you?
We've been in quarantine the last 12 days, and we haven't been sick. I know there was a lot of people sick on the Xanadu before we left, but we haven't had any problems. And we can't say enough about how great Holland has been to all of us. On both ships, the crews were just fantastic. The captains have been upfront with us from the start. And so I just can't understand why, since we're from Florida, that the governor won't let us off.
And apparently, Ed, the governor is saying that he's trying to work this out, get to a decision, and that the president is pressing for a decision and quickly. You are Floridian, so the governor is saying that he would accept you. What about other people on the ship? I'm assuming that because you're quarantined, you don't have any access or communication with others on the ship?
That's true, Dana. We're by ourselves. I mean, nobody has access to anybody. We get 3 meals delivered. We get all the beverages delivered. You just don't see anybody, which is okay. I mean, we understand that that's what you have to do. But the majority of the people on these ships are healthy people. yes, they are foreigners, but we're all members of humanity. I mean, you have to do the right thing.
And what do you think the right thing is, Ed?
Well, you got to get people home. I mean, if the governor would think about it, he probably has a 1,200 or 1,400 room hotel sitting out here that once it's sanitized, he could move people onto this ship. And I'm sure that's somebody has thought about that. I mean, it's incumbent on them to do the right thing. We are all Americans. Americans do not hide. They go after and do the right thing all the time. You can't hide from responsibilities. And you just got to step up and do what it needs to do. And I spent 20 years in the military, and I know that there's a methodology to get this done. And if the governor's having a problem, I'm sure that one of my military brothers can help him with it.
Ed and Faye Hoover, I look forward to talking to you again in the future. I wish you well. I believe, I hope that this will be over for you and for everybody soon that's on that ship. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Bye-bye. New York City's fire and police departments are each the largest in America, and they are right now facing major staffing shortages. Hundreds of first responders already diagnosed and thousands more are out sick. Brian Yennis is reporting live from the fire department's EMS Station 52. That's in Queens, New York. Brian?
Dana, you know, despite the high risk of becoming infected with COVID-19, New York City's EMTs, paramedics, firefighters, and police officers are responding to a record number of emergency calls. But unfortunately, COVID-19 has taken its toll. The numbers are staggering. Take a look. 5 members of the NYPD have died. There are more than 1,200 police officers who have tested positive. Over 5,600 officers are out sick or quarantined. That's 16% of the force. Today, though, Governor Andrew Cuomo said they have a contingency plan.
If we believe we don't have the minimum personnel to police New York City, we could then go to the state police. Worst comes to worst.
COVID-19 has hit the FDNY hard, too. 282 members have tested positive. 1 has died. Over 2,900 FDNY members are out sick or quarantined. That's nearly 17% of the force we get. And they are really asking people to only call 911 if it's a real emergency, if you can't breathe or have a really high fever. I had a personal experience with this. I think I told you, Dana, my grandmother lives in the Upper West Side. She's 85 years old, has pre-existing conditions. She's tested positive for COVID-19. And I understand. The thing is that when you know and love somebody that has COVID-19, it's a real emergency to you. And so I called 911 to get an ambulance there. She was by herself, and they picked her up, but it took a lot longer than it should have. So again, it's really, really important that people, I know the desperation, the fear is real out there. It's so important, though, that my grandmother and others who are so vulnerable can get that service when they really need it. Dana.
Well, we hope we'll keep in touch with you, Brian. We wish her well. Hopefully she'll get better very soon. Thank you. So in simpler times, when police would arrive to break up a party, it might have been because the music was too loud. Now, in some cases, it could be a matter of life or death, with health officials telling Americans to avoid gathering in groups. So what can law enforcement actually do when people refuse to listen? We'll have that next. And 200,000 cases of coronavirus. For context, the United States passed 100,000 cases on Friday night. So it took about 5 days to go from 100,000 to 200,000. And of course, we are testing more, so that was somewhat to be expected. Still, it is a big number. So in some states considering drastic measures to enforce orders amid the coronavirus pandemic, but how strongly can law enforcement be when people refuse to listen? Andy McCarthy is a former assistant U.S. attorney and Fox News contributor, and Philip Holloway is a criminal defense attorney and former police officer. Andy, it's going to become a bigger issue. You saw in Los Angeles, police having to break up a 1-year-old's birthday party. Governor Cuomo today announcing that the playgrounds will now be closed, but people are going to need and want to be outside. So what can the police actually do?
Dana, what I think find in these emergency situations is that you have more of a practical political problem than a legal problem. As a practical matter, they need to be able to have the authority to arrest in order to be able to go in and disperse people, because if they don't think that they can be arrested, obviously they'll ignore the police and then you have a bigger problem. But at this point in time, they don't want to be processing people. They're talking about letting people out of the jails. So the last thing they want to do is start arresting people. It really requires a soft touch and trying to work cooperatively with people rather than adhesively.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
Dana,
Phil, how
if I can just add to that, there is a real tension that exists in many places between health and other officials and then their law enforcement counterparts. Certainly true in my state of Georgia with officials that I am in contact with. They don't want to go outside the bounds of what the law allows. They tend to take their oaths of office very seriously. One thing that keeps popping up in conversations, sort of an overarching theme, is that they don't want to push the tensions with the public too far. There's a very real concern that if they have too much of a heavy hand, to Andy's point, they might inflame tensions to the point of social or civil unrest. That's the last thing that we need. We don't want to have our jails filled with anybody, really, but certainly we don't want people arrested for leaving their house, and we don't want to have to arrest people for looting and rioting. So law enforcement is really having to walk a delicate line here, for sure.
Well, and Andy McCarthy and Phil Holloway, we appreciate you being here with us today, because this is going to get even more real. Andy, I'll give you just a chance to do a quick last word for us on what people should be expecting.
I think what we're expecting is the numbers are, as you just pointed out, getting much worse, which means the tension is going to be ratcheted up. And again, what we need here is a soft touch, not too much of a hammer.
All right, and we need everybody to behave and follow the law. Andy and Philip, thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
Prince Charles speaking to the public for the first time since contracting coronavirus, saying his symptoms are mild, and he worries about the pandemic's long-term effect on England. Watch.
As a nation, we are faced by a profoundly challenging situation, which we are only too aware threatens the livelihoods, businesses, and welfare of millions of our fellow citizens.
Crisis, how this pandemic is bringing out the very best in people all across the country. Up next.